Okay, let's see what we're up against. Well, the case has yellowed, but it's not that bad. But it definitely needs some peroxide. And that magic keyboard doesn't seem to have yellowed at all, aside from the space key. So I think I'll just give the space key the treatment. And the rest of the keycaps are just going to be cleaned. And then I noticed something at the back here. As you can see, there is a small sticker here with a picture of a 3.5-inch diskette. So that indicates that this machine doesn't have one of the early ROMs, because the early ROMs didn't support 3.5-inch diskette drives. However, Apple did offer an upgrade, and when they did that upgrade, they added a sticker. So perhaps this machine has been upgraded by Apple. Well, I don't know, but I would assume that they didn't have a sticker on later machines and instead upgraded the mold for the case. I'll see if I can do some more reading and find out. Okay, let's take a look underneath. And by the way, this machine doesn't seem to have any major dents or cracks. So I think we should be able to get it into a really nice condition. And at the back there is some corrosion on at least one of the screws. That's never a good sign. What else have we got? Model number A2S4000. So let's take it apart and take a look inside. And we've got 6 of these small screws. And then we've got 4 of these larger screws. And they are holding the floppy drive in place. And since we are restoring, we might as well take them out as well. Although if you are just taking the machine apart for a repair, you can probably leave them in. And the rest is clips, I think. And if I'm not mistaken, there is one clip at the front here somewhere. And there are no marks from a screwdriver where that clip is. So that's usually a sign of an earlier repair. Okay, so that's loose. And now I think we have a clip here. At least it's stuck in something here. And I'm going slowly about this because I don't like cracked plastics. Okay, that was easy. And here's what probably was that original Snow White color. Yeah, looking good so far. Okay, well, it's a bit dusty in here, but nothing extreme. Let's get that drive out. I think we need to remove the keyboard first. Yeah, same thing with the keyboard. It's a bit dusty, but nothing extreme. I love those switches. And also the handle fell off, and for some reason it hasn't yellowed. And it's made out of this rubbery material. Okay, now the drive should come out. And it does. It has a belt. Yeah, and it looks alright. I don't think it's stretched. And it's an ALPS drive. Okay, well, I don't see anything apparently wrong. And yeah, that's not much dust at all. That's a pretty clean machine. Yeah, let's just get that board out for now. And we'll take a look at the electronics while it retrobrights. That way we can save some time. And I can finish this video on time. So this machine is a bit weird. It sort of has 2 power supplies. One large external brick. And then this thing here. And I guess this is our first suspect. But we'll get back to that later. And I don't see any of that corrosion that we saw on that screw on the outside. So I was a bit worried for a few minutes, but I don't think we have any moisture damage here. So let's disconnect that speaker. And there's one more screw hidden here. And one more screw down in this corner. Yeah, that was a really easy machine to take apart. We do have the speaker as well. So that is going to be a bit of a problem. And then we've got this paper thing. So this restoration is unfortunately going to be slightly destructive. But we absolutely have to clean this properly. And that means getting it wet and using some chemicals. So that molten tab has to go, unfortunately. I always try to do my restorations non-destructive, and whenever I do a mod I try to make it reversible. But I guess we could at least try to pry that speaker out. No, I don't think we can. I think the only way to get that speaker out is to cut one of those molten tabs. Let's give it a try and see if we can pry it off. Yeah, that actually worked. Yeah, that was a nice surprise. And I almost forgot the front panel on the floppy drive. Although I'm not sure it needs any peroxide, because it looks quite alright, but it definitely needs cleaning. So the entire drive is surrounded by this cage. So let's start by taking it off. And then we have a couple of screws on the side of the front bezel. 2 on each side. And that's all it took. Now this is pretty weird. What's going on here? This is obviously made in plastic. But then we've got a metal part here. And if we take a look on this side, it's also made in plastic. And here are some metal parts. This is a pretty over-engineered piece of plastic. I'm not sure, but I think there's a metal sheet sandwiched between 2 pieces of plastic. And then it's molded. And I guess it's for RF shielding. Well, as you can see, it hasn't yellowed, so I'm just gonna clean it. Yeah, that was weird. Well, let's move on. Yeah, I guess we might as well remove this piece and clean it with soapy water too. Now then we've got the volume knob. Let's pry gently and see if it will come off. No, it's kind of stuck, so I think I'm gonna leave it in. I don't want to break it. It's obviously some unusual kind of pot, so I really don't want to break it. Much rather have it slightly yellowed than broken. So I'll leave it in. Let's not forget that keycap. So let's see how this is held in place. I guess I'll just gently pry and yeah, that just pops right off. And there's one of those lovely switches. Damn, they're good. But I'll get back to this later. And then we have a pretty damn rare item. I know it looks like a Macintosh mouse, but it's not. This mouse is specifically made for the Apple IIc. I'm not sure why, but some Macintosh mouses will work on an Apple IIc, but most won't. So there is some kind of difference inside. And these are incredibly rare, so it's much harder to find one of these than an Apple IIc. At the moment there's only one listed on eBay, and they are asking 140 bucks for it. So I was very lucky to get this one. And it has yellowed slightly, but really not much. I think I'm gonna give this case just a very quick go with peroxide. But really isn't too bad. Yeah, I guess I better be gentle. Yeah, 140 bucks for an old mouse. That's pretty insane. And I think there are even 2 versions of this mouse too. So I think there is one with just 1 screw here instead of these 2. Yeah, the 2C kind of flopped, so there weren't that many made. I mean, at least compared to other Apple IIs. So I guess that's why they are so bloody expensive. Okay, so I guess I'll clean this up, and I'll probably just give this piece here a very light retrobrite, because there is some yellowness going on here. But this piece here, I think I'm just gonna skip. because it looks brand new. I'm not sure if anyone has ever used this mouse, because normally you would see at least some kind of scratches. But yeah, this piece looks brand new. And we should see some kind of dirt inside here from use, because these two wheels here, they collect dust. Now they could of course have been cleaned. So either it's barely used, or someone cleaned it and did a really good job. Okay, I'll clean up all the plastic bits and pieces, and then I'm gonna treat them with peroxide. And in YouTube time, that is going to take about 1 second. And we're done. So let's take care of this keyboard. And I'm happy to report that the retrobrite process went really well. So these are some really thick caps, although a bit oddly shaped. And I have ordered the proper tool to remove keycaps, but it hasn't arrived in the mail yet, so I'm just going to use a soft prying tool, although I am going to be very careful. And it's a bit disgusting, so it certainly needs a really good cleaning. Yeah, so I'm basically just going to pop all the keycaps off, and then we'll figure out how to clean this board. There are already many good reviews of this keyboard, so I'm not gonna go into details. Yuck, that is disgusting. Okay, and that was the last keycap. And this is filthy. And each individual key is locked in place with a tab on each side. And then they are soldered to the board. So removing those switches is a massive task. So we are going to leave them in. So that means we cannot clean this board with soapy water. Okay, so I had a quick go with a hoover and a brush, and that took care of most of the dust. But I wouldn't call it clean quite yet. So I guess we'll have to try with Windex. So yeah, definitely not an easy keyboard to clean. But this keyboard is so good, I think it's worth it. Yeah, it's quite filthy, so it definitely needs this. So I guess I'll just watch some YouTube and clean the entire keyboard this way. Yeah, check out how filthy this keyboard is. Yeah, this is definitely needed. Okay, and let's say we're almost done here. I can't say I enjoyed it, but it's definitely worth it. So the paint has come off slightly in some spots, but at least now it should be clean. And the keycaps are soaked in soapy water right now, so I'm gonna throw them out in the sun to dry. And meanwhile, we'll take a look at what's wrong with that board, or perhaps more likely the power supply. Okay, I'd say that's done. That's good enough for me. And these are not rust spots. They are some kind of thin rubbery pads. And by the way, the entire keyboard apparently is made by ALPS. Okay, let's take a look at our main suspect here. So this power supply is made by TDK in Japan. So I guess we'll pop these screws off. And there is one screw at the back. And something dropped inside. So this probably held a voltage regulator inside. And then we have a lid that looks like it could pop off. But we might as well enter this way. And yes, of course it was. So we've got some kind of brackets. We'll figure it out. I can't see anything obviously wrong. And I was kind of hoping to find something burnt inside here for an easy fix. But this board looks pretty clean. Yeah, no bulging caps. And everything looks nice and shiny. Check this out. I found fault. Let me bring out some 10x magnification and I'll show you what the problem is with this board. And no, you did not guess right this time. Okay, this is not easy to get on camera. But check out Q1 here. I'll try to turn the board and see if I can refocus. Yeah, you should be able to see it now. Check out the leg. It has snapped off. And the other two legs are barely hanging in there. So I bet that if I just push slightly on it, it will snap off completely. Yes, it did. What's up with that? Well, that's a first for sure. So what the hell happened here? What could have caused this? Well, no wonder it's completely dead. I have never seen anything like it. This leg here had snapped off already. And the remaining two legs, they were barely hanging in there. What a strange fault. I did not expect this. And you probably guessed wrong too. Well, I guess it could have been caused by heat. But it looks a lot more like it was caused by mechanical stress. But why and how? This is pretty damn odd. Well, I don't think I have a spare, so let me see what we can do here. No, I did not have a spare transistor. So this is what we're gonna do. I have borrowed the power supply from machine number 3. So I guess we'll call it a donor from now on. And I am of course going to repair that power supply. But I think this is the reasonable thing to do now. And yeah, it sort of works. I wasn't expecting this. I was expecting a test pattern. When you power up a 2C without the keyboard, it should show a test pattern. And we should at least expect the text to check the disk drive. Let's try to connect the disk drive and see how it behaves. Okay, that was a bit sketchy, but let's just try it and see what happens. Okay. So a couple of things are weird. First off, we saw that weird pattern. That is not supposed to be there. Secondly, it's supposed to go into test mode. Or at least show a test pattern on boot when the keyboard is disconnected. And thirdly, it should try to seek with the floppy drive. And it doesn't. I guess the next thing to try is to connect the keyboard. Okay, let's have a go. No, we've got the same behavior. Let me try with another drive. Okay, let's try with this drive. Yeah, that is normal behavior. That is how it's supposed to be. Now, the obvious question here is, did that transistor break now? Or was it already broken? So let's move to the soldering station and find out. And plan B is to take the broken transistor and stick it inside a connector like so. And then solder the wires to the PCB. And that should be good enough for a test. And I can always order a new transistor and replace it. But that means shipping, and I don't want to stop recording this video. Okay, so first we need to get rid of those broken off legs. Now we only need to solder in the wires on the PCB in the right order. Definitely bodgy. Okay, we are ready for a test. And I guess it needs a heat sink in case it gets warm really fast. Yeah, that should do the trick. Let's try it out. Okay, let's turn on the display. And the machine, fingers crossed. Yes, it does work. So we didn't break that transistor, it was already broken. Well, that's an easy fix, so I'm pretty damn happy about this. So I will order a new transistor, but I think I'm gonna leave it in as it is. That is excellent. Let's put that power supply back together. Okay, I guess we should cut this fourth leg off since it's not in use. And we'll move the transistor to where it should be. That is a pretty complicated way of attaching a transistor. And of course we can't mount it in the same direction because we don't have that much room beneath the transistor. So we're gonna have to figure something out. I wonder why they didn't just use a regular nut. And this ended up slightly more complicated because the connector I'm using is a bit too large for this bracket to do its thing. So I had to add a washer between that weird bracket and the transistor. But now it sits really tightly and should be able to dissipate the heat really well. So let's get the screws back in. And finally the lid. So, time to take a look at that board. Not quite yet, apparently, because when I went for that board, I noticed something fishy. Check out the connector on the disk drive. So I noticed the obvious thing here, that it was falling off. And that's probably my fault. But then I saw this. This is not correct. And I have not removed this cable, so this is not my doing. It's supposed to sit like this. So we need to make a new test. Now with the cable correctly in position. Okay, so I have swapped floppy drives. Let's see how it behaves. And yeah, that's a lot better. This is obviously not a full test, but now at least we know it's alive. And our bodged power supply also works. So let's take a closer look at that board. Okay, so I had a thorough look at all the date codes. And this chip down here is 1986, week 27. So this machine came out of the factory with support for 3.5-inch diskette drives. So this board is not likely to have been upgraded by Apple. And I guess they just kept using that green sticker at the back instead of changing the mold. And we will be able to see what's on that ROM chip once we start the machine. Okay, so these machines are known to have a really bad connector for the RF cable to the display. But they can easily be repaired with some solder. And while the board is out, we might as well fix that problem right away and avoid that repair in the future. So that's a really easy fix. Okay, so I guess it's time for reassembly. Well, there you have it. This Apple IIc from 1986 is now fully functional and in pristine condition. But without software, any machine is rather useless. So in the next episode we'll figure out how to get software on this Apple, and hopefully play the first ever graphical adventure game. Thank you for watching. If you want to see more vintage hardware restorations, like, subscribe and leave a comment.